That's what I was looking for. It's not.
You even got them set up for this. You strategically take them every 20 minutes.
Yeah, maybe.
That's for you.
At this point, they're just a crutch.
All right, good evening, everyone. Oh, no, it's only 6:30. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Town of Delafield Board of Supervisors meeting for Tuesday, December 13th. If you'd all rise and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Green, would you do a roll call, please?
Supervisors Miller,
Present.
Kranek,
Present.
Wolfley,
Present.
Michaels,
Present.
and Chairman Troy.
Present.
Thank you.
Just a comment, we have a supervisor that needs to leave by 7:15, so we're going to move this along rather aggressively. I don't want to limit any discussion, but I do want to move it along. There are no citizens in the audience, so no one's available to make comments. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes of November 15th.
Motion.
Approve the minutes as prepared.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as presented. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Action on vouchers submitted for payment. There are no reports or sub-accounts to amend the 22 budget, so we'll go to accounts payable and payroll.
For accounts payable, I'd like to make a motion to approve payments of checks 66201 through 66202 and checks 66210 through 66255 in the amount of $168,324.12. And for payroll, I'd like to make a motion to approve the payrolls dated November 25th, 2022 in the amount of $16,796.92, and the payrolls dated December 9th, 2022 in the amount of $14,545.45.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the accounts payable and payroll as presented. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. I believe there's one communication. Mr. Tim.
So I'll just take a second here. This is a summary of some funding that we requested. It's federal funding called the Federal Bipartisan Infrastructure Law Bill funding. I only give it to you so you have background. We get a lot of citizens that say, hey, you know, we have all this money out there from the federal government, and why aren't we getting any? Or, gee, you know, you should try to get some of that. So basically, the summary is, Wisconsin, the Milwaukee urbanized area received about $53 million. Out of that, taking away some transit and some other things, there was about $25 million worth available for road projects. Those get broken down even further, and so the town was only really eligible for two types of projects: resurface and recondition. This is for Maple Avenue, and then small sponsor projects. So that was about $11 million. And then out of that, the town did not score high enough, and part of that is partly because we don't have a transit system in our town. But anyway, bottom line is we didn't get any funding from that. So kind of the summary is 31 communities submitted projects. They submitted a total of 84 projects, and basically 6 projects were selected out of that 53 million, you know, as it goes down. Leaving 26 communities and 78 projects that were not funded. So it's just, I guess my editorial is, you know, I'm disappointed that federal government has all this money. It would have been nice if some of these smaller communities in the area could have gotten just even a little bit to help us out. But this is how the system works. We end up with
The
very
bottom
little.
line is we applied for everything that we were eligible for.
That's absolutely right.
And that's all we can do, is
Yep,
apply for it.
That's all we can do. But if
Any
anyone asks,
questions
that's
for
where
Tim?
it goes. So.
No, that's good to know.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Tim.
Yeah.
Sure, that's it. Good job. Okay, moving, there's no unfinished business, so we'll move to new business. Discussion and possible action on the recommendation from the Plan Commission for approval of a certified survey map to combine 2 lots into 1 lot at W334S1010 Cushing Park Road. Cormac and Tanya Palmer applicant.
Very simple here. It's they owned a 7-acre parcel and a separate 1-acre parcel. They wanted to combine the 1 acre with the 7 acre, basically erase the lot line between the two so they can put up an accessory building. And so this certified survey map takes care of that. The Plan Commission recommended approval unanimously, subject to the county and the Village of
Summit.
Wales, I think, or no?
Summit.
The other one.
Summit.
Summit to, yes, to, if they have any comments, I haven't heard any back from either of those two, so make it subject to their incorporation of any of their comments before we execute the document.
Any questions for Tim? I make a motion that we approve the CSM prepared by Land Tech Surveying dated November 28th, 2022, subject to the satisfaction of any outstanding comments from the Village of Summit or Waukesha County prior to the execution of the document by town officials.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the certified survey map as submitted with the requirements approved by the Plan Commission. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Discussion possible action on the intergovernmental agreement between the town of Delafield and Waukesha County regarding the municipal recycling dividend program. Tim, or I mean, Mr. Green?
Yeah, so in 2021, a group of administrators and community officials came together to find a way to try and start amping up these recycling dividends that we used to receive prior to, I think 2020 is the first year that we stopped receiving them. So they came up with this agreement for all of the communities that are in the Waukesha County Recycling Agreement, which we are. That kind of outlines the parameters of how those funds will be distributed, how they will communicate the dollar amounts of those funds from the prior years. Essentially, once they are calculated, we will know by the end of May so that we can incorporate the revenue in our budget. If there is an expense, then we can incorporate that into the fee. But it looks like in next year's budget, we will be seeing a dividend, and they're hopeful that we'll continue to see dividends moving forward. So this basically outlines that. It also goes through a little bit of detail as far as transfer stations and how their tipping fee calculations are calculated. We've run this by our GFL partners, and they've agreed to it. They had some questions for the county at first, but they were able to satisfy their comments, and so there will be a one-page addendum to the contract we have with GFL, which they're comfortable doing. So I would look for approval.
Motion to approve the action on the intergovernmental agreement between the town of Delafield and Waukesha County regarding the municipal recycling dividend program.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to the big discussion, item 9C, discussion and possible action on the future funding of the Lake Country Fire and Rescue Joint Fire Department. Now,
Thank you.
before Mr. Chief Fanning starts presenting, thanks, Tim, for coming. Mr. Green worked very hard on a letter that he's distributed to everybody, and he's called and discussed it with all supervisors, laying out the various options. The real question is, what level of funding for what level of service do we believe our town residents are requesting from the fire department and emergency medical services? That's the underlying question. And there's really three options. We can approve, and we have to do, we've been behind the curve on this since August, and we've been fighting to get caught up, and we're still behind the curve. Option number one is we approve a referendum tonight. So Dan can draft the referendum, a dollar amount to be determined at the January 7th meeting, but the question has to be submitted to the Department of Revenue before the end of the year. and then we would decide on the exact dollar amount for the referendum at the January 7th meeting. Question?
10th.
January 10th? Okay, whatever the January meeting is. It's option number one. Option number two, do we not do a referendum and work on a fire fee as an alternative source for funding the Lake Country Fire and Rescue? If that's the decision that we all vote on, then that does not have to be done until this summer. And there's a lot of information we still have to gather to assess the exact fire fee, as well as the exact referendum. The numbers in his memo had changed because two primary reasons. One, I'm told that the town of Genesee has some adjustments to the dollar amount that they're willing to accept. And number two, the dollar amount that's been presented is inaccurate for the commercial properties, at least in the city of Delafield. It's significantly below what they're currently paying in fire and EMS.
And I have major concern about that.
Yeah, we'll get to that. So that's number one, a referendum. Number two, do we do a fee? If we do, it doesn't have to be really finalized till the summer. Or number three, do nothing. So those are the three solutions or options we have to answer the question, what level of service and what do we believe the town is willing to pay for?
Yeah,
With that, I'll open it up.
Yeah, my preference is to go to referendum in April. I think the discussion centers around what dollar amount we need to go to. I think we set the floor the last time this body discussed it in September or October for our budget meetings, that we would go to referendum for a dollar amount that funds our 23 increase to the budget, and let the town residents weigh in on a tax increase, which is how the levy limits work, which is how the town has always gone to its residents to discuss raising the taxes. So I'm strongly in favor of a referendum. I'm opposed to a fee for a lot of reasons. I was very struck by Mr. Green's memo, which thank you for putting that together. At the end of the day, like, the town, we represent residents of the town of Delafield, and we should not agree to a deal that is worse for the residents of the town of Delafield. Like, and it lays out that going to a flat fee model benefits the village of Oconomowoc Lake greatly and hurts the town of Delafield residents. And so, I mean, we are in our second budget in the IMA, and we're not renegotiating it in a worse deal for the residents of the town. Like, at some point, we're not idiots. Like, it's a worse deal for the town to go to that model. So I'm very opposed, just on a philosophical level, to a per parcel flat fee. I don't think if we are in an environment where we're raising taxes on our residents, that the most wealthy residents in the service community should pay less. So I happen to be somebody that would be paying more. And so I will represent the people in that property tax bracket that would be paying more, and say, like, no. I'm not going to vote for something where the 600 people in the village of Oconomowoc Lake not only pay less on a percentage basis in the new IMA, but also just pay less because we've moved to a flat fee. So that is really why I'm opposed to a flat fee. It breaks quite greatly with the history of the town and how we address our residents for tax increases. It breaks with how we've always funded operations in the town. And the flat fee, I just have some philosophical, perhaps moral opposition to how that affects the lower income residents of our community.
Well, just as an open discussion, we can do this one of two ways. We can have somebody like Supervisor Michaels make a motion, have it get seconded, and then we can discuss the motion and vote on it. Or we can have an open discussion, as we generally do. But we did the Thomas Farm on a specific motion, and then we discussed it and then voted on it. So what would,
I think we have to have an open discussion on this
Yeah,
thing. I think we're moving like way too quickly and I understand our backs are up against the wall on this one, and it's unfortunate.
only on a referendum, the back's not up against the wall on the fire fee, but a referendum has to be decided tonight.
Right, and am concerned about deciding on a referendum this evening because we need to figure out what the dollar amount is. And as
Not necessarily.
Administrator Green's memo laid out, we're part of 6 other communities in this fire department. And I understand that it's an individual local choice to choose to go to referendum or not, but I would like to see this consolidated fire department work and be successful at the end of the day. And I'm not getting the feeling from other communities that they're necessarily rushing to go to referendum. And it's a shame that all, 7 communities can't sit in a room and kind of understand from each other what their thoughts are versus the fee versus the referendum. And I just,
That's true, but
I
the
understand.
fire department put us in this position by not bringing this issue up until August. If they brought it up in February, we could have all gotten together as municipalities and we could have done all that. And the dollar amount does not have to be decided tonight. Just a dollar amount has to be decided at the first meeting in
Well,
January.
And I thought it was, I believe, I mean, I don't have the note in front of me, but I believe it was like October that we talked about. It was either the
was
last
September.
October meeting or September, okay, that we talked about, working on getting the language together for a referendum. So, I mean, it's not that, I don't think it's rushing to a referendum. We've talked about it for a bit. I guess, there's a couple things, I guess I'd echo from Supervisor Stevens over there is also that, I agree with a lot of that. I also have a concern about the quality of service that we're providing. I don't want to see us tank the quality of service. We have a great service currently. And so, I tend to agree with you in the sense that there is some multiple considerations in where this is going here, right? Like, whether you live in a $2 million house or whether you live in a $250,000 house, like, they're not
You want good
changing their
service.
service,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And you want it to be good, right? So, I get that in the capacity of, hey, we're all getting the same thing, however we pay for it. And the big one too is that hurts my soul to add a fee, right? If it's residents may consider fees to be a new tax, they are. New fees are new tax. It's not like it's
They won't
optional.
consider it to be.
Right, it is, right?
Yeah.
So that's a issue for me. I think one of the questions per referendum, right, is if it fails, right, like, where is the appetite to say, well, we put it to you, we've got to make a decision, and it's failed now, right? Like, okay, we got to make this decision. Are we letting 6 people go from the fire department, 6 approximately, or are we going to institute the fee regardless? And
That can be done, there's a lot of time to do that.
Right. I guess the one of the things I had a note on here is we talk about the if it goes to referendum and we've got a consideration for is that 2023 an August referendum, but that's 2023.
It'd be April, and there is an opportunity for a second referendum in August. is
I guess
you're
what I'm
noting,
saying
Dan,
is
correct?
if we aren't certain on a number, and as that plays out, if we aim for an August referendum, are we going to have a better idea of where the budget for 2024 is falling for the fire department?
Yeah.
Let Mr. Green answer that. Dan, what are the negatives and
Some
positives?
concerns for an August referendum. For one, if you guys choose a dollar amount, and it will, first of all, it'll give us some time to figure out the fire fee so that we'll probably have a lot more accurate dollar amount for what you guys want to do for referendum. That is good. If it fails, which I think August will have personally, I think it'll have a higher likelihood of failing because it will be the only thing on the ballot. And typically those things, when people get word of a referendum, they come out usually not in support of a tax increase. If it fails, then now we're dealing with another tight timeline to get something done. And we have other communities that are, contingent on what we do, and we're also contingent on what they do. So by tightening that time frame, it hurts everyone. If it passes, great. But if the dollar amount you decide on passes and it's not necessarily lined up with the other communities, then they're scrounging to figure out what they're going to do and what fee they're going to charge. So that's the concern. You can do an August referendum, and it gives the fire chief more time and staff more time to figure out exactly what that fee is, but there are downsides to it too.
What's the downside to an April referendum? From
The time frame that we're dealing with right now, that we need to have a resolution in place by January 10th.
Yeah.
And
no, we have to have it to DOR by the end of
by the end of December, I need to have it to
Yeah.
DOR.
And I guess I thought our budget discussion was really productive, and
I
we
did
were all
too.
in line to see what we can do for the fire department in 2023, because we all want the service levels to improve. And then we would, our solution was to fund it from reserves, which we were then had some pushback on, that I disagree with ultimately, but a workaround was found there, and so I don't think we're in any different position than the last time we all talked about this, is that we have more money going in for 2023, and we need to find a sustainable way to keep that going after that, and I think a referendum's the cleanest way to do it.
Supervisor Magley, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think a referendum is the way to go. I feel very uncomfortable doing anything different. I think the residents have the right to express their opinion, and I don't think we should throw a number that will cover the next 3 years. I think it should be on an ongoing basis.
So
So it would be a referendum once a
ongoing
year.
being that there's incremental referendums that step it up as the fire department needs it? Is that what you're saying, okay.
Yes.
Our attorney doesn't, correct me, our attorney will not allow us to do, we're not, school districts can do that. They can do, we're doing one in 2023, effective 2024, one effective 2025, and one effective 2026. Towns cannot do that. So we can
Okay.
either do the whole dollar amount, $1 million and change, or I think what's more reasonable is to do the $530,000 referendum in April. That's for the 24 fiscal year. So that'll take us through the budgeting cycle for 2024. We specifically asked our attorney
Okay.
last week if we can do that, because we thought that was a stepping stone. And he says, no, we're not allowed by state statute to do that. Is
Okay.
that correct, Dan?
Yeah, so, and I apologize that, earlier, I think, when in this process, I said, you can do a referendum that is in stages, and you have to do one dollar amount. But what you could do is do the full dollar amount, but you don't have to take that full levy. You can still work through the progressions of the 3-year plan, but your levy will be set at that $1,034,000. And just so you guys have an idea of where these numbers came from, these are based on fees that we discussed in our administrator meeting, and these are flat rate fees. So essentially, if you did, let's say, a referendum for $1,034,000 and some change, it would allow the other communities to go forward with a flat fee if they wish. We would just fund it through a levy. The $530,000 figure is the 2024 figure for that first step in the fire fee, so it would essentially allow them to get their 2024 funding, but then after that it would be 2% plus CPI increases unless we do another referendum in 24 to fund 25, and you'd have to do it basically.
Or a fire fee at that time.
Or a fire fee, yeah.
Or there's changes to the levy limit, or, I don't know what
Correct.
25.
Or-
Or we determine that the service level we're getting after adding these 12 people
is adequate.
is sufficient for another 12 months, and perhaps we can delay the growth, or we found, some way that the service is really good and we wouldn't need it right away.
But see, I like that scenario better because of what you just talked about, Steve. Because it shows that we're doing the best we can to keep the numbers under control by reviewing them.
Yeah.
So,
I completely agree, man.
and I think it's showing transparency, so.
Yes, I completely
Oh,
agree.
transparency is critical. You have to, this has to be in front of the voters. So I would agree with Supervisor Magley, Wolfley, and Michaels, that it has, a referendum in April, I would support goes against my nature. I would support the 530,000 that's being requested, and then I take it 1 year at a time and see what the service is like. And
I think that's right, and my perspective, not that it's before us tonight, on the things Dan just said, is that I don't think this body should agree to an IMA that has us paying more than what we just agreed to when we entered the fire department on a percentage basis. I also don't think the town should agree to remove the 2% plus CPI under any condition, whether that's in some sort of different form that we have a cap, but there needs to be some sort of fiscal control within our IMA that pushes us to have resources be controlled. I mean, Donnie does not get to come in here every year and say, like, I need 3 times more money.
No.
The roads, like, no department that we work with does that. And we have a need, and we are supporting that need in big ways as a town. We just did that with the fire department or the police department. So we're not opposed to it, but we just need fiscal controls moving forward, because I think it helps manage the process better
we don't
for all
lose-
7 communities.
We don't lose that 2% plus CPI unless you do the fire fee, right?
well, it depends, we won't lose it in a fire fee depending on how we word the fire fee. Because we can limit the fire fee to 2% plus CPI as well.
And Joe, at some point, we control whether or not we lose it, right? We can agree to
right,
it or we can't, right? And if we believe that it's important to have some sort of control, and maybe it morphs, maybe it changes, I'm not opposed to something that makes more sense, but the town shouldn't come back, like, in our second budget and agree to pay more on a percentage basis. And the town should also not come forward and say, like, we're going to remove all fiscal control. So,
Well, plus this is the only service, in the fire department and EMS are service providers. Granted, it's a quasi-monopoly, but it's the only service provider that comes to the town and says, we want this level of money for this level of service. Everybody else, we go to them and say, we want this level of service, how much will it cost? And we're being told, we want an 8-minute response time and it's gonna cost X dollars. And I don't think there's anything wrong with an 8-minute response time, but maybe not all municipalities want an 8-minute response time. Maybe some want 5, maybe some want 11. It's just,
Well, I think when it comes to response times and some of those things, those are like NFPA standards or American Heart Association standards for, we're a suburban community, so the response time standard is like 7.5, 8 minutes. And the
well,
cheapest-
actually, we researched it, and some areas say it's 5 minutes.
well, depending on where you, depending
So
on.
so it's not 8.5, I mean, there's different standards, and Dan and I spent quite a bit of time researching it. There's different standards and they have it in stages. First responder has X number of seconds to get there, and then the truck, and the full response was 8 minutes, I believe it was.
Right, but I have very, I understand where you're coming from for the, for the $500,000 referendum. It solves our problem for the next year and a half, but it kicks the can down.
Well, actually, that's what I was just gonna say is,
Because then it's, okay, I don't think that solves the long-term problem of what we're trying to do here and trying to solve for our fire department and EMS and for public safety. I mean, if you're gonna, I don't wanna have to have a referendum every 1 to 2 years. I mean, that just,
why not, though? I mean, we just had to completely change the way we do fire service in the town by going to a shared service model, and that provided us a 2-year window. Like, I think the ever-changing nature of fire service in our community, it's 2-year windows, and then the world changes. And I don't know how the world's gonna change in 2 years.
And I'll give you an example. Now they're testing, now granted it's in Japan, but they're testing drones as firefighters. and the drones are loaded with water, and they fly up over the fire,
Yeah.
and they dump the water on the fire. And they're testing, that's testing. Now, that
I
will,
opposed your drone program.
oh, that's a commercial, that's a viable
That
commercial
sounds
option.
amazing. How about we just see if Amazon delivers packages by drones first? I know,
Well,
I hear
my-
what
I
you're
guess
saying.
however, I also, in reality, have not a desire to go to a referendum every year. Dan, you're talking about, if you ask for the full amount, we don't levy for it, it's still there, right? That gives us an opportunity to make adjustments throughout if we do one, because also your total amount, I forget what the,
$1,034,068.
yeah, I mean, the $1 million, call it $1 million roughly. I think we talked about the math on that, and even just as a straight, just average, right? Not actually impacted by mill rate. If you just divided it by number of tax keys, you're talking approximately $320 a year, I believe was the number, somewhere in that neighborhood.
I think for the first number, we compared 320 to the 377 or whatever that fee was. So, yeah, there is some saving because you're not getting that negative dollar adjustment that's remaining in the levy. You're keeping that 736 or whatever the funding was from 2023, and then you're adding money on top of it as opposed to working back and then adding the total. But if you ask the residents if they want to increase their levy by $1,034,000,
You think that'll pass? Really, Supervisor?
I mean,
I want passable. Like,
I
I want that, like,
absolutely,
that
I want
530
passable,
is
too.
is the
I mean, I
max
think-
to me.
Unfortunately, I think it's hard to adequately convey a message, right, to 9,000 some hundred people, that it's like, hey, if we ask this and apply accordingly, right, we won't have to go back and forth with this for 3 years, but it's.
It's not passable.
yeah, I mean, the only way I would say is if you're going to ask for that, either you don't ask for it and just do a fee because that's the only way you're going to get it, or you say, you're either going to pass this or we're going to incorporate a fee, and then you're going to talk about the numbers we talked about, where a referendum dollar amount's actually going to save the residents money as opposed to a fee just because of that negative dollar adjustment, not in the levy.
I think Supervisor Michaels is correct. We need to get as close to passable as we can. I think 530 has at best a 50-50 chance at passing. I think 1,030,000 has a 0 chance of passing, which means we're just wasting time and resources. We're just wasting time and resources with $1 million referendum.
535 doesn't solve the problem.
It solves it for
But
almost
it
2
does,
years.
though. I mean, we're not solving 5-year problems here, Red. In anything we do, are we? Road funding, police service. Like, I don't think we have 5-year horizons. I think a 24-month horizon is pretty good. You and I can disagree on that. I think that's fine. But my perspective to answer your question is that a 24-month horizon for the fire service seems sufficient, and I think it gives us time to consider where it needs to go next. And response times need to improve from 11 to 10 to 9 to 8 with the additional resources that we're given. And then we need to hear, okay, now we know that we have all these things. What we need is going to change, right? It's ever changing. We know that. So I'm not going to criticize the chief that it's ever changing. I'm just going to accept that that's the reality we live in and make policy to that, which is why I think 24 months is a sufficient horizon.
Plus, we'll have new development. I don't know what level, but we'll have some new development.
And a new.
Oh, and a new shared revenue model coming from the state. I mean,
Well,
I know
and-
that people talk about that all the time, but I think that's coming in the fall, and that will
That would be nice.
perhaps impact us. And we also are going to continue
but
to
we just
avail
had-
ourselves of CPI plus 2% every year. So we're going to continue to have more money to increase, even from the levy limit, which will help us fund additional things.
My concern, though, is if we approve a referendum and nobody does anything about it, and not nobody does anything about it, but like that has to be like marketed and talked about. if you put
Well,
it out there,
You cannot, and I've asked Eric to put out a letter again to all of us here. You can't, as an elected official, you are not allowed by statute to advocate for a position on a referendum.
what?
I'll look forward to reading his letter, and I'll make my own opinion
I'd like
on
to
it.
understand
It
it
should be a
too.
session
I
with
mean,
him instead of just a
okay,
letter.
That's fine. I mean, I'll state now that
Be a closed session.
I don't intend to agree with him until I read his
mean,
letter.
hey, like, if you're, I can't say, the fire department needs money. I think it's a well-spent money, and it's gonna prevent you from having a fee in it.
You can explain the need for and I'm just, you
Okay.
correct me. Dan.
I'll tell you now. No, you can't say that.
You
As a board member, you cannot advocate for a position regarding a referendum. And I have it in a letter, and this has been explained in the last referendum we had 2 years ago. And the town, as myself, as the administrator, as any representative of the town, we can give out information. We can put the numbers in front of them. We can explain
We need to have Eric, because
why.
there's 3 new people up here from the last time.
We'll have
Yeah, and we can, and the letter does explain it, but we can explain why. I mean, that.
No,
the-
he
the
can
why.
advocate.
He can advocate,
he can-
yes.
No.
No.
No, you're.
Service
So
provider.
I can
service
tell them all the
provider.
pros and all the cons, and they can make their own decision on how I'm delivering the pros and cons.
Yeah, as long as you do it in a non-biased way. That's why we write everything down, we put it on the website, and leave it at that, and then
We'll
you
have
let.
Eric come in and explain.
let
Well,
me-
first we have to approve a referendum.
Somebody has to go, I know, so.
Yeah, so why don't we, I'm open to a motion, well,
Well, yeah, I mean,
okay, go ahead.
I appreciate all the discussion. I can clearly see the direction that this is heading. I will say I respectfully disagree with that. I will say that we've talked immensely with all of the other partner communities. And the other partner communities, there's no one that is heading down this pathway at this moment. Now, I'm sure you're gonna take action on it in a little bit, and that's gonna change some wheels for some other agencies. But, you know, what we developed here, what I developed here, is a conceptual plan that was based on feedback received from the administrators at our administrator meetings. And I wanna stress the word conceptual. There's nothing in here that's set in stone.
It's not even accurate. It doesn't, Walmart's paying half the fire commission if we go to a fee than they're paying right now, the half of the taxes, if we go to a fee than they're paying now in taxes? Am I wrong?
I wanna stress the word that what we have here is conceptual, and it's been asked to be reviewed, and that's where we're heading with it. I mean, we can, this is not a set in stone, light on fire, take it or leave it type thing. This is a starting point, and let's work forward towards one common goal. I also, you know, from the standpoint of the board approved unanimously the 4-year hiring plan, which was unanimously approved by the town of Delaware members, so that those fee structures were, or not fee structures, but.
Well, I'm here, I voted for it. I said at the time that it was your plan, and I would advance it to the communities to consider. I don't endorse every aspect of that plan, so, go ahead. Please put that in the record.
Fair enough, but I mean, you know, and here we are, we're sitting, you gotta respect how incredibly hard it is at sitting in this seat, and you get pulled in 7 different directions, and you're being told to do 7 different things. So really what needs to happen is that next week at our administrator meeting, the administrators need to get together, and we need to decide if we need to have a community meeting with all 7 communities, so everyone can decide this, so we're not making decisions in silos. I think we'll all agree that when we make decisions in silos, it's a failure.
Yeah, but Chief, I would disagree quite strenuously. I mean, this body's discussing, and I think the direction we're headed, is to go to referendum to approve the dollar amount that you've requested for the next 2 years. So we're doing like exactly what your plan said. I mean, right? Do you disagree with that? You gave us a budget dollar amount for 23 and 24, and we're going to go ask our residents to raise our levy to pay for it. We're not cutting anything. We're not arguing with you about it. We're going to referendum for the dollar amount you want.
That's a true statement. Yeah. And we're not dictating in other municipalities how they raise the dollar amount that you've requested. So, with that said,
I will
are there any
motion to
questions for
approve.
the
Oh,
chief?
go ahead.
If not, I'll take a motion.
Well, I was gonna say.
Well, go ahead,
sorry,
Dave, sorry.
One real quick thing. So, I think the timeline, right, on a decision, Chief, when you're talking about like timeline on decision and numbers on the fire fee, like we're talking 2024 numbers, right? This drop dead date isn't on this. As planning wise, like what's the timeline this needs to be known by? Let's put it that way.
Timeline, what needs to be known?
The dollar figure or what action the town of Delafield is
The summer of
Deciding on-
2025.
Okay.
2024.
Right,
the Summer
so-
of 2024.
2024, right? So or 2023.
23.
Okay.
No, because we're already funding 20, and we funded 23 and we're funding 24 with the referendum. So if the referendum passes, we don't have to reconsider funding until we do the 2025 fire department town budget.
Right, let me rephrase that. If it doesn't pass, your drop dead date for knowing what the town of Delafield's contribution or action on this is for 2024 in 2023 is when?
And really, we start building our budget by the IMA is due just September 1st.
Yeah.
Okay.
We need to change that.
Summer, like I said in the beginning. We have to know, we have to tell if the referendum fails, we have to go to the chief in early summer and say,
Yeah,
this is the
that
fire
sounds right,
fee
yeah.
that we've agreed to.
Early summer, yeah.
Right, so
early summer.
that's what my
Yeah,
concern
this is the
is
dollar
there.
amount that we intend to have for you, available for you next year.
Right,
Yeah, early summer.
Have a community level meeting and talk to all, these are all of your partners. There's 55 very intelligent individuals. And
Well, I think we should do that even while the referendums, assuming the referendum gets approved for August, or April rather, we should have the community meeting and start working on the fire fee February. And get it
I'm all for that because
as a backup to the referendum
right.
failing.
When we look at what this is, when we went over when this meeting started, right, and there's three options, right, referendum fee or nothing, right. I'm not really interested in the nothing option, and we are on a timeline required for the referendum stuff, right, which that backs us into like, okay, if we're going to do a referendum, we have to know essentially today, right?
Yeah.
And if that referendum fails, that doesn't mean option two isn't off the table, right? 2A, right? But we have, that's the way I'm looking at this is presentation one to the public, right?
Sure, Joe.
Is
Yeah.
referendum availability to voice the opinion, and if that fails, now there's only two options that are left for the board to make, which,
Be or nothing.
No, that's not true. You could do a smaller
2A.
referendum in August
Yeah.
for $200,000 in conjunction with a fire fee.
I would also challenge the Department of Revenue's opinion that we can't use additional money. that the town
because actually
has.
I had a note here on that, was a question on, can we do a referendum to fund the EMS portion of it and a fire fee and split that out essentially, because I know that there was some talk, and that's neither here nor there for further conversation, but
Yeah.
it's just, I think that's what,
We have options.
Right.
The only option we don't have is a referendum tonight.
right.
Well, if you guys want to take this to a referendum, just don't decide on a dollar amount tonight. Let me go
don't
to the
have to.
administrator meeting and figure out.
We need to
You know-
give
We
have a little
direction
bit
to
of
the
time.
staff to
Yeah.
draft a referendum question, and they present that to us on the 10th.
And then we still vote whether or not we're going to take it to
Well,
referendum.
it's a real shame that the administrator meeting is next week, because it feels like we need to meet after the administrators meeting, and understand what happens at that administrators meeting.
To do the question?
Well, just to
We can
understand.
direct Dan
the-
to do a referendum question, and on the 10th,
No, the town
we can
needs to
reject
take
it.
control of its own destiny as it relates to fire service.
Yes.
We're not waiting for one more administrator meeting. We're not waiting for one more correction to the sheet. We need to make a
I
decision and
understand,
take
but we-
control of our own future.
But
It's
we're
not
still
our
working
own
together.
fire department, though. We're in a partnership with all
Yes.
these other communities.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure that this thing is successful, and there's leadership to make sure that this is successful. I'm sorry, but this looks like the town of Delafield is going rogue.
How are we
And-
going wrong? We're going to referendum to
All right.
raise our levy.
Right, but
We're not even doing that tonight. All we're doing tonight is taking a motion on directing the staff to draft a question for the referendum and submit it to the DOR by the end of the month. We can submit it to the DOR, come back with their approval, and on January 10th, we can vote on whether we want to do the referendum.
Okay.
If it fails, then it fails as a vote. We're not voting on the referendum tonight. We're voting, correct me, Dan.
We want to secure that.
Yeah, let me
scenario,
get the
right?
question in. I just need to know, if I should submit it or not, if you guys are going the fire fee route or the referendum route, and that's
So we're just
basically
covering
what
our
I need to
bases
know.
tonight, and then the real discussion is going to be January 10th on whether or not we go to referendum or not, based on
That's-
what,
Correct, and then that'll be the motion if you want to approve a resolution to go to referendum, or if you don't.
That's the 10th. Tonight's
so-
just giving direction to staff.
I just don't want this
Okay,
to
that
isolate
was not
us
clear.
from
I
the
did
rest,
not-
Oh, I thought I said that in the beginning.
the other communities.
Okay, we are directing the staff to draft a referendum question with they need a dollar amount. We're going to use it 530, but that can be changed. And we're not bound by that question. Well, we're bound by that question if the DOR approves it, but we're not approving the actual referendum tonight. Is that correct, Dan?
Yeah, the resolution is approving the referendum. So this
10th.
conversation was, do we want to direct staff to go in that direction? And obviously, if everyone's unanimously in favor of a fire fee, then I would say, well, I'm not wasting my time. If there's, 3 or 4 board members that want to do a referendum, then I know what direction I need to take.
So
make a
difference-
motion to direct the staff to submit the question to the Department of Revenue on the April ballot for the referendum for the funding of the fire department.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to direct the staff to prepare a referendum question and present it to the DOR by the end of the month to be voted on at the January 10th meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Yeah, I know you are. Okay. I thought I made that clear in the beginning.
I gotta scoot though.
Thank you.
That's a Christmas card. For lack of.
Good night.
What's Genesee's issues? Oh,
We're
Dan?
not over with yet.
I mean, I haven't adjourned.
Yeah, shoot. Okay, discussion and possible action on an amended letter of credit for the Lake Country Fire and Rescue. And let the record know that Supervisor Wolfley had to leave. So,
I will motion to approve the amended letter of credit for Lake Country Fire and Rescue.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to approve the letter of credit for Lake Country Fire and Rescue. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Announcements and planning items. The town hall is closed on December 23rd and 26th for Christmas. It's also closed on December 30th and January 2nd for New Year's. Plan Commission meeting is Tuesday, January 3rd, 2023. And the town board will meet Tuesday, January 10th, 2023. Let the record show that the agenda has 2022 for both the Plan Commission and the town board meeting. If there's nothing else, we'll.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Merry Christmas. Have a good night.